Hi everyone, and welcome to today's three health and safety pains of contractor management. Today, my name is David. I'm the marketing manager for Effective Software, and I'm joined with Mandy. Mandy's our sales specialist, and she'll be taking you through the majority of the content of the webinar itself. The webinar will run from about 15 to 20 minutes, and at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking all your questions that you have relating to the content that has been discussed. You can send all your questions from the right-hand side panel. There's a question panel that allows you to send any questions over to us, and we'll try and get to all of them by the end of the webinar. But if we don't, we will be sure to get back to you after the webinar. The webinar itself as well will be recorded. So hopefully today we'll get the recording over to you. So you'll be able to send that to whoever you see fit as well within the organisation. So the main focus of the webinar will be that, and the main three pains that we'll be discussing is the issue of tracking compliance, training management, and audits. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Mandy, and Mandy will just bring you through the main content.
Thanks very much, Dave. Appreciate all of you guys showing up here for the webinar. So obviously today we are going to be talking about contractor management, which, as I'm sure all of you know, is becoming more and more to the forefront of health and safety management, especially with a number of events that have occurred over the last number of months here in the UK and Ireland. So typically when we're speaking about contractor management, there's a couple of key, pains or challenges that organizations would face. So first and foremost, they typically be using manual processes. So a contractor submits maybe all of their insurance or documentation to them in paper format. They've got to manage that in a more manual format. Maybe they're tracking compliance or jobs that are being completed across the organization in Excel spreadsheets. So this information can live in silos and be difficult to track. And then finally, any sort of further actions or steps that need to be taken either by perhaps a contract manager or the contractor themselves are typically issued out through emails and phone calls, making it very difficult to actually track through to completion there. So when we look at what these manual processes can create for an organization, there's usually a common sense of, a lack of oversight or a lack of visibility across the organizations, and in that, a lack of confidence. So you're not entirely sure that everyone that's working on your sites or everyone that is working on your behalf is in fact compliant. There may be contractor reviews that you're looking to issue out, but just scheduling is very difficult, and you might feel like you're actually swimming in different formats of information, which can create a lot of stress for yourselves, but also hinder your ability to understand what's going on across the organization. So first and foremost, what are the biggest challenges as far as tracking compliance? So you might have your own internal process for contractor approvals. That might be difficult to get oversight to if you've got multiple sites or different departments within your sites. Historical records can be difficult to follow up on. The contractor might not be proactive in sending them on to yourself, so you're chasing them to get the information that you need. And then when that documentation does fall out of compliance, it might go unnoticed. So obviously you can't be everywhere all at once, so you're relying on those manual processes to support you. And there again, those actions are difficult and time-consuming to track. So first and foremost, what the Effective system can assist with is providing a very simple red, amber, green status for your contractors for approval. So this might be on a site-by-site basis or even a department or a project-by-project basis. But you can see here that we have a listing of different contractors that's available, and beside them a red, amber, green status. So what this essentially means is that the person with the appropriate approvals within the organization, so this might be the contractor manager themselves, this might be your health and safety individual, they'll have a certain amount of access that will be locked down to themselves where they can approve or disallow this contractor. And what the key aspect is here, and you'll see this up at the top, is that the system is automatically, anytime this status is changed, it will date, time, and user stamp it so that you can basically start to automatically record a history of this contractor, and in your reviews with them, understand if maybe there's a history of non-compliance. Maybe they're typically not following the instructions that you've given you, and then maybe you have better information to determine if you want to continue a working relationship with this contractor or not. Finally, the contractor will essentially have a hub where they can upload their own documentation. So you can give contractors access to their own individual profiles, And within this profile, there is a documentation hub where they can upload any sort of requested information. So you can ask of them through an assigned action, I want you to upload these many documents. They can go in and do that. A compliance date will be assigned, and what this compliance date will do is then trigger reminders going down into the future, so in proactive nature. So with this June expiry, potentially in April or May, you're going to start to receive notifications, as well as the contractor themselves, that this documentation will need to be updated, so enabling you to be more proactive. And then finally, with any of these actions or tasks that you are in fact issuing out to the contractor, so far as to say maybe uploading their safe work statements, you can issue this out in a task or an action. So rather than an email or a phone call, which can be very difficult to prove should you ever need to down the line, this is a documented task, and again, date, time, and user stamped. And you can see here that any commentary that's going back and forth across this task or action will in fact be user and date stamped as well. So this enables the contractor to communicate back and forth on this task with you, maybe request an extension for the timeline, but effectively you'll be able to see, are these tasks going overdue, are they not being completed, and you can actually have an approvals process before this action gets closed out to your liking. Now, finally, with that training management, obviously training compliance is a huge aspect of contractors. You want to be able to understand that the people working on your behalf or on your sites do in fact have the correct training to complete the work that's being asked of them. Now, that can be very difficult from the top levels to understand, because again, these can be in paper format and can be very difficult to find if they're in silos or specific folders. Maybe only a couple of people in the organization actually know where to find them. So if an incident does occur, this can create a lot of issues downstream for yourselves in your investigation processes, and if further actions do need to be taken. So again, within the contractor profile, they can have a list of all the employees that will potentially be working on your site and the basic details about them, so email, phone, what have you. This is essentially a miniature profile within theirs, and they can have as many or as few employees as they need. Now with this employees, a training matrix will be created. So a very configurable system. You can track as many or as few of these basically training modules that you would like to have. So this might be site inductions for yourself. This could be working at heights, first aid. There's no restrictions or definitions. It's really a user configurable system that you can make work for your organization's processes. But the key aspect here is, again, that these are going to be date associated. So these green matrix, this is basically indicating that this person has in-date training that's been approved by yourselves, whereas the reds are obviously indicating someone who's fallen out of compliance. Now, before they would hit this red status, they would be receiving notifications, as well as yourselves, that this training is basically coming up and ending the life cycle of its compliance. Additionally, with this PDF icon there, any training certificates or documents that have been uploaded against this particular employee, you simply click on the PDF icon and they will download right to your desktop. So if you ever do need to supply these certificates, you will be able to very quickly and easily without having to communicate with a number of different people or search around your sites. Then finally, as far as these notifications that I've been speaking to, how can we adjust them to match your business processes? So when I say user configurable, it essentially means that in the background of the system, you at a very top level of access will be able to configure who gets notified, under what timescales, and is there anyone else that may be in the organization that needs to be notified of this? And so it's a very simple toggle on and off and drop down menu, and essentially you can change that at any time or configure very specific elements to suit your unique business processes. Now, finally, with contractor audits, this could be checking up on the safe work status that they might be completing for yourselves. This might be the contractor reviews. The detail and the depth that you will be using will probably vary from organization to organization. But just like any other audit or inspection, you want to be able to reduce the duplicated work that's going on. So, transferring a paper form into Excel or any other sort of format. You want to be able to manage any sort of the actions that have arisen from this contractor's audit or inspection, and then you want to make people aware of certain risk levels across the organization. So how we can assist with that is a very simple auditing or checklist scheduling tool. So within the actual contractor module itself, you can assign to people within the organization these checklists that they can complete. And this may be, again, a contractor manager, a health and safety individual, and you'll be able to see very quickly and easily what is scheduled out across the organization, maybe what's gone overdue, and you'll be able to track these against the particular contractor. Now, how they complete this audit or inspection can be done off of a mobile application. So this could be across a tablet or a smartphone, but essentially enabling you to create a checklist that can be user configured to suit your business processes. And these could be different types of checklists for different types of contractors. There's no restriction for yourselves. But in using this mobile application, which can be used offline as well as online, they can simply complete the contractor audit or inspection right directly on their device and submit it right back into the system for actioning. Now, these actions that have been identified, these will be assigned out to individuals for completion, maybe assigned out to contractors themselves, but the clarity that you need will be very easily extracted into a user dashboard. So we have a number of extractable one-click reports in PDF or CSV format that can be extracted at any time. But what the user configurable dashboard will enable is essentially you to see live information being pulled from the system at any time. So this might be getting oversight to the different actions across the organization, how many are going overdue, what's the typical time to close these, and just give you better information quickly to understand where the priorities lie. So finally, what does this mean for your business and your health and safety? So it's essentially just supporting your proof of duty of care and making sure that you have the tools and the processes in place to accurately protect all of your employees, members of public that might be on your site, and obviously the contractors themselves. Protecting the business reputation so that someone who is representing you, but maybe not necessarily a direct employee, will still be falling in line with the health and safety standards that you've set. And then obviously financial. So if an adverse incident does occur, the fact that you want to be able to financially prove that you have done your due diligence and your best duty of care, and hopefully avoid further financial repercussions. So that is a very brief overview as to where we think we can help with the 3 panes of contractor management. Happy to take any questions now that might have come up.
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, and there's a few questions that have come in, and again, please feel free to send them over as much as possible. And I said, as if you can't get to them in the kind of the next 5-10 minutes, we'll definitely get back to them after the webinar has finished. So the first question I got here is can and how can I import the list of contractors?
So perfect. This is something we get asked about all the time within the system. So typically with the majority of information, we can import through a very simple CSV format. So if you are currently managing your contractors in an Excel or CSV spreadsheet, we just marry that information up into the correct fields that you want to populate in. And it's a simple import that can go into the background of the system, creating the contractor profiles, and then you issue access out as you see fit.
Okay, thanks for that, Mandy. Another question we have is, can you give multiple employees across access to their main account?
Absolutely. So I guess one of the things I should have clarified there was that when you give a contractor access, what you're essentially doing is enabling them to view their profile and provide you the information that they want. Now, that may be, depending on the size of the contractor, multiple people within that organization. So absolutely, you issue out the access that is deemed fit to yourself, and that would just simply be an easy access profile that would be replicated through their email address.
Okay. Thanks, Manny. Another question, is the onus on our organization to chase for updated documents, or is this something effective software will be able to manage?
Great question. So that is the whole purpose of giving the contractor access to their particular profile. So they will, in fact, be receiving those notifications that their documentation is about to fall out of date, maybe their employee training is about to fall out of date, and in receiving those notifications, you are in fact giving the onus to the contractor to complete this, meaning that less time is spent from your organization having to chase up on this, and you are empowering the contractor to do the right thing. If they choose not to comply and they don't update their documentation, then obviously you can take the steps appropriate for your own organization.
Thanks very much. Right, so what is the cost per contractor?
Great. And so contractors are typically just considered a relative access within the system there as well. So depending on the license and structure models that you have for your own organization, they could simply just be added as a part of that depending on how many you wish to have access.
Perfect. Yeah, again, if there's any more questions, guys, just keep sending them on. I have one last question. So yeah, as I said, please feel free to send them on. So does your app only work on specific devices?
Oh, very good. So the mobile app itself works across Android and iOS, so your tablets and your smartphones. So that generally covers the majority of the clients that we work with. We do have basically a development plan for Windows as of next year, but that won't be available until 2018.
Okay, I have another question here again. Regards to the reporting aspect and the dashboard that was discussed there, how configurable is that?
So it really depends on what your user needs are, and obviously varying degrees of licensing that we would have there. There is basically a format for widgets where you can drop in, pick and choose the areas that you want to be tracking. The one-click reports are extremely configurable and filterable. So there would be a number of filters that you can configure so far as what areas of the business you're looking at, timelines, managers, what have you, and those would be automatic standards. Additionally, if you wanted further configuration, you would go to the widget module where essentially you'd be dragging and dropping different reporting elements into that dashboard and reporting on exactly what you need.
Cheers, Mandy. Just another question, not necessarily specific to contract management, but you're saying, how long does it usually take to implement a system like this?
So it's hard to give an honest and accurate answer as far as implementation without understanding obviously the size of the organization and the scope. But generally, what we would say is for an organization between say 500 and 2,000 employees, you'd be looking at roughly 2 to 3 months tops to implement entirely. And a lot of that, in fairness, would depend on the timescales that you have to dedicate to us. So we have a customer success team that would be specifically dedicated to this onboarding and implementation. And what they would do is set up a weekly cadence with yourself to be meeting, understanding what the next steps are, gathering information from yourself. So we have had clients that implement very, very quickly, but obviously as a health and safety manager or professional, you might have other tasks or jobs that you have to be addressing at the same time. So I guess the implementation is a fair bit open, but it really depends on how much time you can dedicate to ourselves. And we do have a dedicated team to make that process as streamlined and quick as possible.
Perfect, Mandy. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that we have at the moment. Yeah, again, please feel free to contact us. We sent a mail, as I said, of the recording of the webinar. So please feel free to have, if you have any questions after, if you're and digest the content that Mandy's ran through. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Another thing is this is just a series of 3 pains. So we have a series of 3 pains against all other health and safety processes such as audits, risk assessments, incident reporting, and training. So they're all contained on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to check them out if you have the time. And also, please make sure that you're following us either by Twitter or like LinkedIn. So all our webinars will be advertised via social media. So again, thanks very much for taking time out today. We're just under the 20 minutes, so I know that your time is extremely precious. So yes, again, thanks very much for attending the webinar. And yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch.
Thanks very much.